We are going to now go to our panel. So we've got Karol from Orbital Night, who's going to moderate for us. The panel is about the challenges of being innovative and unique in the hyper-casual market. Kind of a perfect segue from what Shai has been talking about, and in fact, what John has been talking about earlier today. So hopefully Karol will join us in the group. Fingers crossed. There we go. Hi, Karol. How are you doing?
Thank you. So, hello everyone. My name is Karol. I'm the CEO and founder of Orbital Nights. We've been in the mobile business for 9 years now, and recently we've got like some success with hyper casual, and that's why I'm here. We released a number of games with Voodoo. Maybe you've played some of them. It was Castle Wreck, Crazy Kick, and recently Force Master. And I'm happy to be leading this panel today. So let's kick off this panel with introduction. So maybe let's start with Surojit, and please correct me if I mispronounced your name.
Oh, you said it right. I'm Surojit. I'm co-founder of Firescore Interactive, which we were the creators of 3 big hyper-casual hits in the past 18 months or so. They were soap cutting, acrylic nails, and hair dye. All 3 of the games were published with our publishers, CrazyLabs. And in the last few months, you may have heard that Firescore was also acquired by CrazyLabs. And this is part of CrazyLabs' big expansion into the India market, where we've started a number of accelerators, and we'll be starting a lot more in the coming year.
That's awesome. Thank you. Tamara, could you give us a quick intro?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Tamara. I'm Business Development Director at Lion Studios. Been at Lion and Hypercasual for a while, doing my main focus right now is to find talented studios, to onboard those studios and help developers to succeed. Lion Studios is a part of Apple family, and we're doing a lot of great games that you can find in the top charts. So that's small.
That's awesome. Thank you. Thank you. Klaus, what about you?
Greetings. Yeah, Klaus Kääriäinen here. I'm the CEO at Jestercraft, and a little bit of Jestercraft. We basically do consulting and assistance for game companies to do proper monetization designs for different games.
That is really awesome. Thank you. Let's now move to Abdellah.
Hello everyone. I'm Abdellah, and I am the CEO and founder at Shinko Games, and we've recently founded the Kokoro Games. We've shifted our focus to hyper-casual games this last year, and I am here to share a little bit our experience with the hyper-casual games and learn from you guys a little bit. Hello.
Great, thank you. So the topic for this panel is we should be discussing about the challenges of being innovative and unique in the hyper-casual market. And I find it really interesting because for me, hyper-casual is all about innovation, right? So I think a good point to kick off this discussion is maybe to start from the top of the funnel. So I'm just wondering about your ideation phase. So where do you guys get your ideas, and how do you manage to keep a healthy stream of new ideas? So which is probably the real challenge here, at least from my perspective. And I'm wondering, what's your take on that? How do you keep being innovative in that field, and what are your challenges? So maybe let's start with Surojit.
Sure. So to give you some context, we've tested a number of ideas, and as a development studio in the past 18 months or so, and it is very challenging to constantly stay relevant. And we've seen that, of course, after some time, you tend to run out of ideas, and sometimes you need help from your publisher, or, you need to look elsewhere. But in our experience, I think, accepting, first of all, that we are going to be failing at a lot of ideas is very important. And that then tends to lead us to conceptualizing twice or thrice the number of ideas that we'll actually go into production with in a particular month. Of course, there are many places to look for ideas, but the place the market has reached today, it seems like whatever we do produce or any tests we do, they have to kind of be relatable, and that's what we found is the key to today's market, to cracking it, is to be relatable and to give users something that they're already familiar with.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, what about you, Tamara? Like, you have like a perspective of a publisher, so that's going to be something different from mine. And I'm wondering how do you look at the ideation phase? I guess you probably have some sort of process to help the developer. I'm just wondering what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So first of all, I would say that any person, like everyone at Line ideate, and we call it SPAC. So like any idea can be a winner idea, and everyone has different backgrounds and experiences, so they can bring their thoughts to the market. But when we talk to the developers, of course, we're sharing our ideas, but from the idea part to the game, there is some flow, right? There is some path to go through. So we usually give 3 advices and like ask 3 questions. First is like, is it different or better that is already in the market? And of course, we usually push everyone to do different. This is more into like aligned with the innovation part that we were mentioning before. The second, and what is your vision for the final product? Because of course, hyper-casual is very CPI focused, but at the end of the day, you should have some good product metrics, right? And you should have LTV, and like final vision of the product is actually will help you to achieve that. And the third one is, does it align with your strengths? So like is it this idea fits to your team's strengths, what they can do, capabilities, what they like to do? That's very important. If the team likes the idea, basically, or if the team sees this idea, it might be even theirs, but they are not seeing it, how to finalize it at the end of the day. So that might be also some like issue. But yeah, that's pretty broad, maybe a bit rough, but yeah, 3 questions, different, better. What is the vision for final product? And third, does it align with your strengths?
Yeah, I think the last point is really important, and we've internally at Orbital Night, learned it the hard way. There was a moment where the simulator games were really, really popular, and we wanted to follow that trend. We even did a people popping game, pretty disgusting one, trying to follow the trend.
You're not the only one,
Yes, I know. But what we found out during that process is that we are not into making those kind of games, and we were better off doing what we call internally power fantasies. And once we realized that and switched back to the games that we liked doing, we immediately managed to land another hit. So I think that's a really good point, just to be aware of your strengths and maybe try to be at least a little bit focused. Maybe trying to be a little, sounds like an oxymoron, but being aware of your strengths, I think that's a really fair point. What's your take, Klaus?
Actually, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Tamara about those questions that you just listed. So you say that the first question is that how you differentiate from kind of the existing games. Was that one of the questions that you asked? So kind of what are the on your perspective, the kind of things that makes a game differentiated? Is it the graphics or some mechanic or controls, or basically how big of a change do you find is necessary to have an differentiating game on the market?
Basically, everything that you listed might be. I don't think that graphics in its own will be enough, but graphics with controls or theme, setting, like different feeling, different theme. We can see mechanic, like just swipe mechanic, right? Used from game to game, but it's always a different game, right? Due to some other criteria, due to some other features. It can be different in multiple ways. yeah, it may be male focused, it may be female focused, right? It may be very broad and generic. It may be like, I can actually do that all day long, but yeah, it's very important to follow the games that are not only in top charts, but also that other developers are just putting to the store. And it might give you a sense of what is being worked on right now. And like by ideating, it can help you with your ideation, and it also can help you with eliminating and actually going away from some ideas that you had.
Yeah,
and play the games on your phone. That's all.
Yeah, I'm just curious because from kind of our perspective, we try to find kind of the innovative and unique ways on the monetization side as well, because that's kind of a less listed topic when designing kind of a new hyper casual game. That because of course the right answer is the ads, like in 90% of the cases. But I think kind of there's always room to discuss always that when thinking of a design, like from the ground up, that how can you affect the whole feeling of a game by doing a whole different kind of a monetization design, not just kind of making a different game mechanic and adding ads into that. So do any of you guys and Tamara find kind of ways or kind of unique ways, or have you found unique ways to kind of make monetization in hyper casual games, or is that kind of a straightforward thing for you?
Can I just do a small comment? I honestly believe that monetization is just a cherry on top of the cake, and and it cannot be your main focus. The main focus is your core gameplay and the feeling of the game. And if the game is well retaining, well engaging, and it has like it gives unique experience for the player, they will play it. You will easily monetize them. Like by easily, I mean like with some like with some A/B tests, let's put it that way. But it can be with purely advertising monetization. It can be with some features and some introduction of in-app purchases. Of course, it can be hybrid monetization. I don't think that anyone does these days purely in-app purchases in hyper casual, but yeah, but it is of course important to think about monetization while you're ideating. Like you have to understand how you're going to monetize your game and like this gameplay. Because like, for example, for puzzles, it will be mostly with interstitial, some hints and some skip videos, for example, based on the game's complexity. But with the simulation games, it will be different. For some for idle games, it will be upgrades and some other stuff. So yeah, everything is important, and it more comes to the second point of what I said about like final vision of the product, of the project idea. Yeah, but we're definitely not doing that like as an innovation only.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and before we move to Abdellah, I just wanted to add one more comment, because when you said that, I realized that when we started doing hyper casual games, I found it really liberating, you know, that it is, I mean, so simple, I mean, so straightforward, because you focus at least on the early stages purely on gameplay, right? Before that, we were so obsessed about, you know, building games around IPs and figuring out how we're gonna monetize them before we even had a game, you know what I'm saying. Mm-hmm. So and when we ditched that approach, and you know, when we embraced the hyper casual way, I mean, everything clicked. I mean, I really, I mean, I love that approach. I mean, I'm skilled probably because I'm a game developer and a gamer myself. But I love working with games that way. I found it so liberating. So yeah, I mean that what you say just resonated with with my experience. And probably we should move to Abdellah. Please
Okay.
correct me if I'm mispronouncing.
No, it's right. So for
what's your take? What's your take on the
for our
ideation
ideation phase, I will tackle it from a development point of view. Okay, what we are finding ourselves doing is that we are 2 or 3 developers right now. So what we do is when we want to start on a new idea, we take 2 or 3 teams, okay, and we start prototyping many prototypes around each of one of those teams in the first week. After the first week, we then choose the 3 concepts that looks to us have a chance to be successful in the market. Yeah, this is how we are doing with our ideation phase.
It's kind of like a game jam approach, right?
Yep,
So you
exactly. We are taking our inspiration from game jams. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm just going to add 2 cents. At Orbital, we've got yet another approach. There's like 29 people in the company, so like it's quite a few. And we have a Notion board where everybody can post ideas. And each week we do a meeting and we vote on those ideas. And every idea that goes, needs a certain threshold of votes, and if it reaches that, it goes into the idea backlog. And then we have a prototyping team which is free to take any idea from the backlog and prototype it. We aim to to stick with a 3-week period before we push it to test and get some early KPIs, and those early KPIs will determine if we do another iteration or if we kill it. So that's kind of the way we do it. I mean, I was curious about your approach, because we sometimes run into cases where we have like no ideas because we run out of all of them, and then we are kind of doing the same thing like that you are doing, looking for a theme and then brainstorm around it and fill that board again. So that's kind of our approach. Yeah, staying in that, Surojit mentioned that when you're doing like a lot of ideas, when you're testing a lot of ideas, it means that you're gonna fail really often. I mean, most of the time fail. I mean, we're doing Hypercasual for like 2 years. We did I don't know, something like 80 different prototypes, and only 3 of them, well, kind of 3.5 if you count pimple popping, managed to be successful hit games. So the question is, how do you cope with that, when working in a space where when you're constantly embracing failure, when most of your ideas fail, and how do you keep motivated? How do you keep on killing those ideas and moving to the next one with the same with the same attitude, with the same energy levels? Just wondering how do you guys go about it? So maybe let's start from the end now. Abdellah, what's your approach?
So actually, our approach is that after we choose those 2 games we are working on, we are trying to reach a certain level of polish in those games, okay, and we put them on the market. What we want to achieve by that is, maybe they can't be successful and be a hit game, okay, but they can generate a flow of money to keep going. And what I've noticed when we switch to the hyper-casual game market is that many developers are developing many games, okay? And when you go to their store, for example, you find many prototypes, and there are some good ideas there, but they aren't polished. So, for example, if a user stumble on your store and play one of those games, for example, he will never come back again. So we are taking a little bit of a different approach to polish a little bit those games. So even if he plays a user plays those games, they will enjoy them and maybe try another game and stuff like that. Yeah.
Okay.
Instead of killing the idea, we try to mature it to a certain level. Okay. Before we go to another idea.
Okay. Aren't you afraid of that you're going to spend too much time on an idea that's, that you probably should have killed earlier? And I'm asking this because I've been in that situation quite a few times.
So actually we are not, but we are killing those ideas in the first prototyping phase. Okay, because we are prototyping a lot before we start working on something that seems could have success. We already have killed those ideas that we are sure can't pass. Okay, but we only polish the ones that we think could have a certain level of success, but we stop working on it when it is polished enough. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That's because you have this game jam approach, and you do this like internal prototyping first.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, that's a clever approach. Klaus, what's your thoughts on killing and staying motivated?
Yeah, I think there's kind of always something that you kind of can take out from failed projects. It's something from the related to UA or some minor part on the controls, or something that you could kind of identify from the analytics itself that was working and that was a good choice. So from our perspective, it's kind of the thrill of trying to find that one thing or two things out of the projects that you just failed, and kind of bring the best parts to the next games as well. So that's kind of our take on kind of approaching the failures, that you always need to learn something. If you didn't learn anything, it was a waste of money and waste of time in all senses. So that's kind of our take. Always learn something from the failures.
Yeah, it's just kind of look at it not as a failure, but as a lesson. That's a great approach. Tamara, what's your take?
Yeah, I should admit that not only developers are feeling stressed and frustration, but also publishing managers. And like we also work on a lot of like multiple games with multiple.
You are invested as well, right?
We are also invested, and sometimes like I'm not less upset with like one or like with a failure with like high CPI, for example, or super low engagement of one or another game. It's first, but what I found for myself is that do games and like that you like to play on your own, like that you want to keep on your phone, even if it has like high CPI, for example, it has to be killed. And if the process of development and if the process brings you some joy, right? It's like, I know that it's I don't want to sound too romantic here, but in general, just take it as an approach. Just do games that you like, and you don't have to kill it. Yes, it won't be played by millions and hundreds of millions of players, but you will have it, and maybe your colleagues will have it, maybe your family will have it on your phones, and it still will be a game in the store. So technically, it is published. And of course, into continuation, what Klaus has said, learn from your mistakes, like study what exactly didn't work out. So like go through all the analytics if it is possible. If you don't have access to this analytics, find a publisher that can give it to you, or like talk to your publisher and just get it from them. Like marketing numbers can tell you a lot. For example, gender, like gender and age groups. Maybe CPI is too high because age group is like 65 plus and it is too small. So that's also like numbers and data can give you a lot of answers. In which platforms, what are CTRs? Maybe it's just the creatives, maybe you can still push there. And also in-game metrics, like what is the playtime, how many sessions, what is the funnel, what is the complexity and fail rates. All of that can give you a lot of answers, and that can help you with achieving much faster, good results much faster.
Right, thank you. I like your comment about keeping some of the games on your phone. There was one of the prototypes that I was actually making, which had terrible KPIs, but my daughter loved it. So there was a plus side to it.
yeah. I have 4-year-old daughter, and she sometimes plays games that are not published.
Yeah, and I was like, why the terrible KPI? My daughter loves it, right? So but I moved on. Surojit, what's your approach?
Right. So I want to give some context to this question as well, because I think one of the things that Hypercasual did was it changed the gaming space and the process of development, the timelines, the resources you need and stuff. So, when we moved from casual games in our previous startups and we started this company, we changed our mindset immediately, because earlier I spent a year and a half making one game. All right. And that was a failure. So when we started understanding that, hey, we could fail in 2 weeks, these small failures, they don't mean as much. When you've spent a year, 2 years building something and then fail, that's a long time. But when you failed over 2 weeks on one prototype, and then over 6 months, you have 20 prototypes that you've tested, sometimes it still doesn't feel like a failure. And that's something that comes with adjusting your mindset to hypercasual. I think at least that's what it was for us. So between me and my co-founder, we had 4 failed startups between us. So when we came into this space, we were already kind of weathered by the storm of our failure. And that's to bring back to the romantic aspect of hypercasual, is that you can really fall in love with this process, because especially when you've been burnt by the gaming industry and how challenging it can be, I think when you discover that hypercasual has so many advantages to it, then these failures that you go on are just part of the journey. And it's part of the end goal of trying to build a successful studio. So I think for us, it's more about how we changed our mindset and we're ready for this, aggressive strategy of failure. And that kind of worked for us.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Yeah,
we actually had in our previous startup, there's a saying that fail fast, but we put it to the next level, that we had the mission of fail fastest. So we just wanted to find a way to fail as fast as possible. So yeah, one way to go.
I've been doing a 1.5-year project and failed too, and I know it hurts a lot, and that's a good point, because I think that experience. I mean, we almost went underwater because of that project, but we've managed to save the company. But I think that experience helped us embrace those values, like you said, because sometimes we have this discussion, what, we failed this project, but we should be happy about it because we did it in a couple of weeks, not like that project, when we were working on it for 1.5 years. So we should be happy because we learned that it's not working, in this amount of time. So I think this mindset and this approach really helps. Great. So I'm just wondering, we've been, we just did two questions, and we're above the how, we've got I think 15 minutes, something like that. So there's one more question, because we've been talking more, about ideas, about prototyping, which revolves about, around game mechanics, and I'm just wondering about, maybe the innovation in hypercasual is somewhere else. There's the previous panel, Oscar was mentioning, hybrid casual approaches, and changes in the business model, maybe UA strategies, maybe in monetizations. how do you think? Maybe there's more room for innovation than in looking for new and unique ideas, new game mechanics. Maybe it's maybe it's new business strategies. Maybe it's new marketing strategies. What do you think? Maybe let's start from Tamara this time around.
If I understood your question correctly, like how hyper-casual can be okay,
because we were talking about innovation, right? And
it's
so focused about the ideation and then the prototypes and the game mechanics, right? And maybe the innovation, maybe we should be talking about something else. Maybe it's business model, maybe it's monetization, maybe it's different UA strategies. I'm just wondering, what's your thoughts on that subject?
Yeah, so we can look at hyper-casual from different perspectives. And if we say that hyper-casual is a business model, of course, there are two components there, is like CPI and LTV. So it's a UA side, like user acquisition side, and monetization side. And in this case, I think user acquisition, for example, and hyper-casual are two inseparable components, right? And it is driving itself. And I cannot say is hyper-casual driving user acquisition and marketing, or it's marketing driving hyper-casual. I think it's just they're going one by one and bringing innovation from both ends. If we're talking about monetization, the same thing. I'm not sure. I think that monetization comes from bigger titles, and hyper-casual is taking inspiration from casual, mid-core, high-core, any type of core games, and we can see more and more features brought from highly engaging with longer tail games. Even small features like keys and chest rooms, right? Is it is it only it's not a hyper-casual invention, right? It's still but it's still in the gaming area. And so I think it's, just to summarize, I think that hyper-casual takes the best from different areas, and even not from gaming as well. So how many developers are doing right now prototypes based on the Squid Game from Netflix? I've seen a lot already. So, right, it's like situational gaming already, situational prototyping. So, and it's also part of innovation, I guess. It's never, it never existed before. I have never seen like that. Like, it is in the market for a while already, couple of, for a year or something, right? To make a quick game, quick prototype based on a trend. But we couldn't imagine that a couple of years ago.
Right.
It would be dead, right? Why you're still doing match 3 game, right? Or farm based on some idea.
Right. I mean, I saw a couple, publishers, developers trying mixing match 3 mechanics with hyper-casual, and totally. I think to rephrase that, I mean, I was more about some out of the box ideas. Maybe the innovation is somewhere else, not in the ideas, not in the prototypes. Maybe it's somewhere else. I don't know where, but it's just I'd like to speculate about on it. Speculate on it with you. So, Abdellah, what's your take?
So the question was, is there another way to innovate in the hyper-casual games other than in the gameplay, right?
Right.
And I think that Yes, I fairly believe yes, because what I think some studios should focus on is on a marketing strategy, for example, for how to for example have a user acquisition strategy. For example, what I noticed is that a lot of developers doesn't have users, data about their users. For example, you could build a relationship with those users, for example, and then you can retarget them later. For example, you could, I am just assuming here, but you could build a way for the players so you can collect their emails and then communicate about your latest projects and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Although,
there is room
yeah.
of improve, and we are thinking about some ways. But I do think that we can innovate in other places other than just focusing on the gameplay.
Right, right. Thank you, Surojit. What's your thoughts?
So I definitely think we're still very early in the hyper casual space, and as with any industry, I think there will be innovation that comes. I think we haven't even started scratching the surface of the innovation yet. We're still riding the first like couple of waves of this hype. The market is just about maturing. We haven't, I guess, we haven't reached a saturation point as yet. But I think in any industry, you need a few years before you start. Once you reach that maturity level, and then there'll be another wave of innovation, I'm sure. And there are innovations that are happening, I'm sure, on the developer side, on the publisher side, that we don't hear about, and that are specific to those publishers that are developing things that are unique to them, technologies that can help them. And I think those are the innovations we're seeing right now. And I'm sure in the coming years we will see a lot more innovation, both on the product side and on the publishing side.
Right. Thank you, Klaus.
Yeah, I kind of, as we all are aware of, kind of the whole hyper casual genre is rather new in a sense, but still it's kind of taken a big kind of a market share now. So we can kind of say that hyper casual games are now here to stay, kind of. But what we will be seeing is, of course, kind of that the hyper casual will be evolving into something else that we won't be calling a hyper casual genre anymore, but it's something whole different. And kind of that's my take when I was talking about demonetization before, is of course kind of these are kind of tools that we can try to find. It's kind of an innovative process itself to take the whole hyper casual genre and use that as a tool to combine with different kind of business approaches and make something totally new. So that's kind of our take in that sense. And as you, Surojit, mentioned, is that there's stuff happening like behind the curtains all the time that being tested and tried out. And that's kind of our take at Jestercraft as well, to help and assist find those kind of different new business aspects and how we can actually use hyper casual as a kind of a tool to create something whole new. So that was my previous take on when I talked about the innovation in the monetization. So that's like only one aspect of it. So I really find that what we will be seeing is new genres evolving out from the hyper casual market, but the hyper casual market itself is here to stay, in my opinion.
Yeah, the new genres are, that's a good point, and I can share a bit of our own experience. Like one of the projects that we've been testing, which has been cloned or did in parallel, I don't know for sure, but some other publisher which had really good retention but not so great CPI, and wasn't actually scalable, so it had to be cancelled. So we came back to that idea and we've built a bigger game around it. So we took that good retention and built more meta system. Basically, we took this hyper casual core and built like a casual progression around it, and we released it as an Apple Arcade game. It's called Spirebust, and actually what happened, it's our best game to date. So I think mixing those things, maybe taking what's great about hyper casual, those sticky cores, and trying to mix it with other genres, maybe that's the way to move forward. Maybe there's some what the business folks call blue oceans, new ways to explore. So those are really interesting experience for us, because we didn't know how it's going to end up, and it worked really great. So maybe you and people that are listening to us, maybe that's one way to try and innovate. I'm not sure if we should be moving.
I just want to add something here. It's very interesting.
Sure.
It's a subject that we discussed a lot, and based on this question that you asked, is it's just a statement that, hey, maybe hyper-casual will not keep evolving, but maybe the rest of the gaming industry will evolve into hyper-casual in some way. And that's kind of maybe what we're seeing with hybrid casual and other kind of experiments along the way.
Maybe that's an interesting perspective. Maybe it's not hyper-casual games morphing into casual games, but casual games morphing into hyper-casual, right? yeah, that's could be that way. So
sorry, I can support that, because when I have developers coming with casual or like even mid-core ideas, I'm saying, the approach and the process will do the same. Do core gameplay, let's test and then see if it works. If it works, then we can add meta and all the features, etc. So the development process of hyper-casual definitely can be spread across all the genres, that's for sure.
But do you think it's doable for a mid-core or even hardcore game, like just to take out the core and prototype it quickly and get meaningful data without all the surrounding systems, which take months and years to build?
Take my words smart. Okay, everything should be reasonable.
Right. But still, that's challenging. So it's within the topic of our discussion. I'm not sure if we should be moving to Q&A right now. It's like we've got 10 more minutes left, so let me open up the Q&A. I'm not sure it should be Oscar or me doing this. For some reason, it's not working for me. So
the first question is how much time these games takes to be made.
Thank you. Yes, I see it now. I have two monitors. It's showed up on the second one. Yeah. So, hello, Oscar.
Sorry, I didn't realize you were switching over to Q&A. I'm happy to take the lead on that if that helps. So I think there were a whole bunch of questions that came up. We've got loads of questions. The first one I think I'll chuck at you is, at what point do hyper-casual games end up feeling like living games? Obviously, I didn't write that question, but it's very much in my bag. Do you guys have any view on that kind of the need for maintenance and the drive for user retention over acquisition? At what point are we talking about live ops community activity, stuff like that, or are we just talking about just keeping the game feeling fresh? Who wants to pick up on that? So do you want to start, because you're my closest?
Sure. So from the games that we have ended up publishing, I think so. Live ops tends to be a little. The word tends to be used a little differently in hyper-casual. We are building new content. We're keeping the game fresh. We're not necessarily doing events and things like that, but we're trying different monetization strategies. We're trying different ad strategies, level funnels, and things like that. So in our experience, that's kind of what we've been dealing with when it comes to live ops, and not necessarily like seasonal content or events and things like that.
Yeah. Karol, all right, yourself.
Yeah, right. So I have like two perspectives of it, because we've been doing like classical hyper-casual games, and the experience was kind of like similar to Surojit. So we've been doing basically game optimization for quite some time, and I mean, it's not defined for how long. It's more of a we do it until it stops making any meaningful uplifts, and it's not again focus on on seasonal updates, on events, but then again when we do it differently with Spire Blast, which is this game built with hyper casual core and more casual meta around it. We try, because we see that we get a lot of value from re-engaging old users, right? So it's not about getting new users in. It's about getting old users back, to check out what's changed, and oh, there's this new update and bring some new cool features. So when we build that, we are not necessarily focusing on the long-term retention. We prioritize features that are quite early in the funnel. So as much new, to get a healthy balance between new and old users, just to be able to participate in that. So that brings us to events, some seasonal themed stuff. But again, we started doing that because we noticed that a lot of we've got a lot of returning users, and that's what's driving that process.
Yeah, I think that idea of returning users being the focus for the hyper-casual end makes a lot of sense. Now, actually, personally, I prefer not to use the word meta for this, because meta for me means stuff that's not the game. So we're talking about the social engagement, the reason why somebody would YouTube or Twitch stream this thing, the things that are not the game. I prefer to use the term context, because I think context is everything. And the context of play, the sense of purpose and progression, I think thoroughly applies even to hyper-casual games if you want them to play multiple times the same day. So I think context is a much more useful word myself personally, but I think that's a campaign of game design language I'm going to lose, but I'm going to try anyway. Tamara,
maybe progressions.
Maybe
progression systems is accurate.
But for me, context is not just progression. Narrative can be part of it.
Right.
The in-game economy. Now, I don't mean like big, complex economic systems. I'm also thinking things like the hot dog economy principle. So you know how you buy hot dogs in 8s and you get buns in 6s? That imbalance is an economy. And applying that kind of imbalance in a hyper-casual game can work if you're very, very careful, because it's about thinking about the context of how do I keep the player active, like they're feeling like they're walking on a ball. So they've got to constantly keep I've got to get enough wood, I've got to get enough to do this, and I've got to keep doing that. And that is the game. That can work. Tends to be more complex games that use that. But do you get why I use anyway? I will talk about the game design for years. Don't let me. Tamara, sorry, your opinion on this whole point about living games versus when does a hyper-casual game become living?
Yeah, totally agree with previous speakers. I think that live ops and hyper-casual also coming with marketing, along with marketing. So if you want to introduce some new content, it should, because users are not staying in the game that long and it's pretty hard to bring them back on a day 30, for example. Usually we're talking about new users. So, and if it is like New Year event, for example, or some new features, you definitely want to introduce that and show it on the ads. And then it is also important to give it to the users as early as possible, because otherwise those users can see it as a misleading ads. So there is a lot of tricky context can be in a live ops and the hyper casual. So yeah, but of course, if the game retains and if the game is big, and that's definitely should be a part of publishing process.
Yeah, I tend to think that, like I say, I want to keep the kind of the boundaries of what is a game relatively kind of firm. I wouldn't try to say take a game that's got good retention and then suddenly add kind of seasonality to it necessarily. It might work in like Halloween, makes sense, but maybe a longer term narrative added and bolted on can often fail very badly. But I might take the core mechanics and the context loop and then apply a metagame to make that a bigger game, and that will be a different game probably, I suspect. So Klaus, what about yourself? I mean, how do you feel about this kind of balance between kind of going from the sort of hyper casual to more living experiences?
Yeah, you kind of sum it up already pretty well, but kind of for my take, of course, is always the numbers itself. Like be able to understand that is this really a good kind of approach to continue working with. Of course, so the numbers speak itself in most of the cases, but of course there's a kind of a cases that you kind of can see that with a very low effort you're able to apply some, as mentioned, live ops or new features or live events for some holiday calendar events or something like that with very low effort. But I think kind of if you wake up doing these into a game like in too late, you are already too late. So you basically have to have the structure planned beforehand that when you're going to do the updates, if you're going to do those. So when the time comes, you're actually ready and be able to implement those with the as low effort as possible. So kind of thinking this beforehand would be my take.
No, makes sense. And we're out of time, but Abdellah, do you want to add a quick comment on that topic?
I think that for hyper-casual games, I fairly think that it doesn't need live ops, okay? But as Klaus mentioned, those things need to be planned earlier in the development phase of the game.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's why having a kind of KPI-driven approach, which I think Hypercasual has really introduced the rest of the industry, is incredibly powerful, regardless of what kind of game you're making. Guys, I really wish I could spend another hour talking to you. I think there's so much rich, deep stuff we could get into. But unfortunately, I have the pressure of time. Thank you all very much for contributing. And Karol, thank you very much for hosting.
Thank you
lovely
very
hearing
much.
from you